October 15th, 2020 was a bit chilly. It wasn't really cold, but Chad Abeta thought he best wear a jacket. He drove his pickup truck to the pit in the backyard and then took 2 tow straps and put them around the tool chest. It was heavy. He thought there maybe were still tools inside. After getting the chest secured on the tow straps, he hitched the other ends to his pickup and carefully pulled the tool chest out of the pit. When he finally got the toolbox pulled out of the pit, it had come about halfway open. There were blankets hanging out of it. Chad wanted to see what was inside, so he opened it all the way. What he found were skeletal human remains. While all this was happening, the family of 83-year-old A.J. Harden had begun to worry about his well-being. Things had gotten strange ever since his granddaughter took over his care. His family hadn't heard from him in weeks, and they were worried that something bad had happened to him. Did something nefarious happen to A.J.? I am Eric Carter-Landin, and this is True Consequences. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I wanted to share what info that I have on who AJ was as a person. We weren't able to find much on his history, so I'm going to read a bit of his obituary as well as some entries from the guest book on the obituary website. AJ Harden, 83, of Lake Sumner, New Mexico, was born April 2nd, 1938 in Fort Sumner to Carl and Ola Blankenship Harden. He grew up in Fort Sumner, where he attended school in his early years. AJ worked in the logging industry in Alaska and Oregon. AJ was a veteran of the U.S. Navy. He married Virginia Roberts in 1962 at Marriageville, California. They traveled across the country while AJ worked as a truck driver. They made their home in Wellington, Texas and Dixon, Missouri before returning to Fort Sumner. AJ drove for Furs Trucking for many years while living in Fort Sumner. He owned and operated his own truck for a long time. According to his son, AJ never retired. He and Virginia built a hamburger stand and set it up in Fort Sumner. They continued working for years. He was a member of the Church on the Hill in Fort Sumner. And like I said, I'm going to read some of the entries in his obituary virtual guest book. Bill C. wrote, "Uncle AJ, I was just told, miss you, but now you're with CJ and sis. So sad, my favorite uncle." Heather M. wrote, "AJ was always quiet, polite, and hospitable. What I love and enjoy the most about AJ is that we shared a love of old westerns, particularly John Wayne. May you rest in peace, AJ, and say hello to Duke for me." Don B. wrote, "I drove for Furs out of Fort Sumner in the 80s with AJ. I remember him as an all-around good man with a keen sense of humor. He was a good driver and an even better American who served our country honorably. Rest in peace, AJ." Josie wrote, "He was truly a sweet man. It was an honor to have known him and to have helped at the burger stand. Gonna miss your sweet face, Papa. May you rest in peace." One of the recurring themes in the guest book was the fact that AJ was considered to be a sweet and loving person, and it is clear that he is truly missed and left a massive empty space in his community when he died. Now I want to pick up where we left off. The tool chest was just found, and AJ's family was worried. Specifically, Aaron Harden was worried about his grandfather. Aaron's sister Candy Jo had placed a no trespass order on everyone in the family, making it impossible for them to go visit AJ. Candy Jo had taken over the responsibility for AJ's care a few months before, and things had been tense ever since. Aaron didn't think that AJ needed a whole lot of care. Yes, he was 83 and he was ill. He had high blood pressure and a bad back, but he could still get around. He could cook for himself, he dressed himself, and during the time that Aaron lived with AJ, he would give Aaron rides into town wherever he needed to go. AJ wouldn't drive far, but he could still go to town and get his groceries. AJ would help Aaron with his finances too. AJ and Aaron shared a bank account, and when Aaron got paid, he would put his money into AJ's account. Then, when Aaron asked for money, AJ would write him a check, but he would keep the rest. It was like a savings account. AJ always knew how much money Aaron had. Sure, AJ was elderly, but he was still sharp. Aaron hadn't seen his grandfather for a few months. He lived with him for quite a while, but then Candy Joe moved in and everything went to hell. Now he was banished from the house on the lake and he couldn't visit AJ anymore. Candy Joe had seen to that. Since Candy Joe moved in, Aaron couldn't put his money in AJ's account anymore either. Candy Joe was writing checks on AJ's account, and after a while, AJ's money was gone, and so was Aaron's. Aaron moved out to keep the peace, but it was a decision that he regretted as he stood on the edge of the yard that surrounded the lake house waiting for sheriff's escort so he could go inside and get his things. Candy Joe was there. She was cleaning out the shed in the backyard. Aaron watched her until the sheriff arrived. Finally, the escort got there, and he called Candy Joe on the phone and told her that he would be escorting Aaron through the house to get his belongings. She met them at the front door. Aaron asked her,
"Where is AJ? Can I talk to him?"
"He's in a nursing home. He couldn't take care of himself anymore. He's got your number if he wants to talk to you."
"A nursing home? Where?"
"He doesn't want you or anyone else to know where he is. He's embarrassed."
Aaron lost his cool at that point. He told the sheriff's escort, Lieutenant Ghana, he was worried about his grandfather. No one had heard from him in at least a month. He said that Candy Joe might have done something to him. Lieutenant Ghana calmed Aaron down. Candy Joe had gone back to the task of moving stuff out of the shed. Aaron was beside himself. He said,
"I don't care about my stuff. I need to find my grandfather."
Chad Abeta was renting a home in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. He had moved in with his wife and 5 kids a few months earlier. There was a huge pit in the backyard of the house where it seemed a lot of people went to dump trash. Chad and his wife, Robin, tried to keep the kids away from it, but their oldest son would go down there and check out all the trash and use some of it for target practice off and on. One day, Chad's son was talking with his grandfather, Lewis, and he told him about a big tool chest in the pit. "It looks like a good toolbox. It's in really good shape. You should go look at it." Lewis went and looked into the pit to see the tool chest. It was a big one. It was one of those that you put on the back of a pickup. It did look to be in good shape, too. He couldn't see anything wrong with it. He told Chad that he'd like to pull the toolbox out of the pit and then call the landlady to see if he could have it. After all, someone thought it was trash. He couldn't imagine anyone wanting it. October 15th, 2020 was a bit chilly. Not really cold, but Chad thought it was best to wear a jacket. He drove his truck to the pit in the backyard and then took 2 tow straps and put them around the tool chest. It was heavy. He thought maybe that there were still tools inside. After getting the chest secured on the tow straps, he hitched the other ends to his pickup and carefully pulled the tool chest out of the pit. When he finally got the toolbox pulled out of the pit, it had come open about halfway. There were blankets hanging out of it. Chad wanted to see what was inside, so he opened it all the way. And what he found were skeletal human remains. He immediately called 911 to report it, and police showed up shortly after. Chad led them to the toolbox, he answered all their questions, and then went back to the house. Police immediately cordoned off the area and set up a perimeter. They called the coroner to retrieve the body. Inside the toolbox, they found several blankets and a set of dentures. The body was fully clothed and had black electrical tape around the head covering the mouth. There was also tape on one wrist. The hair was long and blonde, and the body had what appeared to be a blonde beard. Police were reluctant to say whether the victim was male or female, but the clothing and the beard made them lean towards male. The remains were fully dressed in a black and orange long-sleeve button-down shirt. The cuffs were rolled up just above the wrist. The person was wearing brown loafers, dark-colored jeans, and a black belt. There was a corroded bracelet on the right humerus bone. Police called Brenda Moyer, the owner of the property. They told her what happened and asked if she would answer some questions. She agreed. She told them that quite a few people dumped trash in the pit behind the house. She had hired Aaron Harden to clean out a shed back in June, but after he finished the job, he didn't come around anymore. Aaron's sister Candy Joe had texted back in August saying that she needed to dump some trash in the pit too. Candy said that she was cleaning out her grandfather's house and needed to get rid of some large items. On the way to the property, the flatbed that Candy Joe was towing behind her pickup got a flat tire. She asked Brenda if she could leave it at the house, and Brenda said that she could. Several people came by the property to either dump trash or pick up mesquite. She never minded. The pit was huge and was anything but full. Brenda mentioned that Aaron and Candy Joe had a grandfather. She said that it had been several months since she'd seen AJ, but Candy used to bring him around once in a while when she would dump the trash. Candy told Brenda at one point that AJ was in a nursing home, but she would never say which one. Brenda also mentioned that Candy used to live at the residence when she dated Brenda's son, Sean. Sean and Candy had a daughter together, and Candy had custody of the child. She told police that Candy Joe and Sean had dated for about 6 years, but they hadn't been together for quite a while. Police went to talk with Sean next. Sean gave the same story. He and Candy lived at the home for quite a while, but they weren't seeing one another anymore. He said that Candy had a new boyfriend and would stay with him most of the time. That man's name was Garrett Bean. Police then asked if Sean knew anything about AJ's location, and he told them that Candy Joe had told him and several other people that she put AJ in a nursing home. She was telling everyone that his health was failing and she could no longer take care of him. She would never tell anyone where the nursing home was, and when she put AJ in there, or the name of it. She told Sean that AJ didn't want anyone to know where he was, especially her brother Aaron. Sean also said that AJ had deeded his home over to Candy Joe about a year before. AJ's home was on Sumner Lake. This is when police decided the next person they needed to talk to was Candy Joe. They asked Sean to call her so that they could bring her in for an interview. When Sean reached out to Candy Joe, she agreed to speak with police, but said that she was on her way from Dexter, so she wouldn't be in Fort Sumner until around 3 o'clock. She arrived right on time in a white GMC pickup. Candy Joe sat down with Sergeant Gerardo Hernandez. She told Hernandez that she had lived at the residence where the body was found for about 2 years in 2018. She said the pit was in the backyard at the time, and she knew that it was there. She had been throwing trash in it for a couple of years now. She told them that she had asked Brenda if she could dump trash in the pit about 4 months before. She had been cleaning out the garage at her grandfather's home and needed a place to dump stuff. She said she hadn't been to Fort Sumner since June. Hernandez asked her if her grandfather had ever been to that residence. She said that he only went with her. He never went by himself. Hernandez then asked where AJ was, and she told him that she put him in a hospice care facility. She told him that the care facility was somewhere near Wellington, Texas, but she couldn't remember where it was. She said that she could look the name and number up if he wanted her to. She told him that she had put him in the hospice facility about 5 or 6 months before because he was losing control of his bowels and wouldn't let her clean him up or help him. She offered to call the hospice facility and have them call Hernandez so he could speak to AJ. She made it clear that AJ was safe and being well cared for. He asked her when she last spoke with AJ, and she said that it was in September, the month before. She said she talked to him on the phone. She told him that the payment for the hospice was coming out of AJ's Social Security. It was drafted from his account every month. She said that she didn't have access to his account or his Social Security funds. She was then asked if she knew the person who was found inside the toolbox. She told Hernandez that she didn't. She was then asked if she knew anyone who would try to hide a body in the pit. She told Hernandez that there were only a certain amount of people who would want to put a body in the pit. She said that Brenda was a friendly person and would allow anyone to dump trash in that pit. She also said that the area is very secluded and people rarely go down to the pit, so it would be a good place to put a body. A few days later, on October 20th, Hernandez called Candy several times to get the information for the hospice facility that AJ was living in. She never called him back. Hernandez had gotten wind of another incident involving Candy Joe and AJ, so he called Lieutenant Michael Guana at the Debaca County Sheriff's Office to find out more about it. Guana's story shed more light on the situation with Candy Joe. He said that in late August, he attended a civil standby call at AJ Harden's lake house. He was met by Aaron Harden. Apparently, Candy Joe had filed criminal trespass notices for everyone in the family, including Aaron, on August 21st. Aaron told Guana that he hadn't talked to his grandfather in quite a while and he was concerned about his safety. Aaron told Guana that the white GMC pickup belonged to AJ, so he should be home. The trespass notice meant that Aaron couldn't go onto the property, so Guana tried calling Candy Joe to see what was going on, and she didn't answer. She called him back a few minutes later, and Guana told her that Aaron was concerned about AJ. Guana asked if he could speak to him. Candy Joe told Guana that AJ was in a nursing home, but she couldn't remember the name of it or the phone number. She also told Guana that if AJ wanted to get a hold of Aaron, he could. AJ had Aaron's number. On October 20th, after talking with Candy Joe and Lieutenant Guana, Hernandez filed a search warrant for AJ's home. He tried to call Candy Joe again before executing the warrant, but she wouldn't answer. He then called Brenda and told her that he was trying to contact Candy Joe. Brenda called Candy, and Candy called Hernandez immediately after. Hernandez told her that he needed the number to the hospice facility right now, and Candy Joe's story changed again. Candy Joe told him that one of her grandmother's sisters, or sister-in-law, she didn't know which, had gone to the facility and taken AJ out. She told him that now she didn't know where AJ was, but she still refused to give AJ's number to the police. She did ensure Hernandez that AJ's number was still working since she paid his cell phone bill and hadn't turned it off. She told him that she had tried several times to contact AJ, but he wasn't answering his phone. She said that she hadn't had any contact with AJ for a month and a half. Hernandez pushed her for more information. He asked more about the facility. Was it a nursing home or a hospice? Candy Joe told him that it was a privately owned hospice facility. He then asked what the name of it was. She told him it was called Shady Oaks Retirement Estate and it was in Wellington, Texas. She said it was near or outside of Fort Worth. She told him that she needed to go find her grandfather. She had no idea where he was or who took him out of the facility. She was packing to head to Wellington, Texas to find out exactly where AJ was. The following day, October 21st, Hernandez contacted the New Mexico Social Security Administration. He needed to find out about AJ Harden's financial situation. AJ was indeed receiving Social Security benefits. However, there was no indication whatsoever that he was in a facility of any kind. If a beneficiary goes into a facility, the facility will apply to the Social Security Administration to be the representative payee because they want to be paid on time. This is the responsibility of the facility, not the Social Security Administration or the beneficiary. There was no authorized payee on AJ's record. No facility had ever applied to become his representative. His money was going directly into his account. Later that day, the ME's office called Hernandez to confirm that the body in the toolbox was AJ Harden. Candy Joe had a lot of explaining to do because everything she said so far turned out to be a lie. On October 22nd, there was a blur of action and information for Sergeant Hernandez. While he was on his way to Artesia to track down Candy Joe and interview her, she called him to find out why her grandfather's house was searched. Hernandez asked her to meet him in Roswell so that they could talk things over and she could get an update on the case. She told him that she needed to contact her lawyer before talking to them anymore. She said she would talk with him and then call them back to set up an interview. She never contacted the police again. Police then went to Garrett Bean's home and found that he lived with his parents. Garrett's father told Hernandez that Candy Joe would stay at the house with Garrett sometimes, but that she wasn't there that day. Hernandez asked Garrett's father if he knew that AJ passed away. Garrett's father told him that Candy Joe had told Garrett that her grandfather had passed away in his sleep a month before. Garrett showed up a little while later and he agreed to be interviewed by police. He denied knowing anything about the toolbox and he also denied helping Candy Joe dispose of AJ's body. When Hernandez asked for Garrett's DNA, Garrett stopped talking and asked for a lawyer. Aaron also contacted Hernandez on the 22nd. He called to confirm that the body found in the toolbox was AJ. Aaron told Hernandez that AJ didn't have any problems with Candy Joe and he was always happy to see her when she came to visit. AJ liked everyone. He never had problems with anyone. This was when police learned that Candy would take AJ's checkbook and forge checks. Once it was drained, she just kept writing checks. And of course, they would bounce. As Aaron told more of the story, it came out that the toolbox that AJ was found in belonged to him. It was supposed to be on the truck that Candy had been driving, but Aaron had taken it off the truck at AJ's request and moved it into the shed in the backyard. He stored it under a shelf in the shed until he could come back and retrieve it. When police executed the search warrant for AJ's home, the toolbox wasn't found there. They put the dots together and figured out that the toolbox that AJ was found in belonged to Aaron. Garrett's lawyer contacted state police to request an interview on October 23rd. Garrett told his lawyer that he had information about AJ's murder. He told police that on October 21st, Candy had texted him and asked him to call her. When he called her back, she was hysterical. She told him that she was at the state line, heading towards Texas. Garrett calmed her down and talked her into coming back to meet him. They met at a motel where they spent the night. That night, she told him that about 5 or 6 years before, she had been raped and she killed the person who raped her. She told him that she freaked out when police executed the search warrant on AJ's home since she was afraid that they would find evidence of that crime in the house. Garrett told her that she needed to talk to the police about all of this. The following day, Garrett was interviewed by police at his home. After he spoke with them, he met with Candy Joe again at the same motel. Candy admitted to Garrett that she killed AJ. She told him that she had given him Xanax and Ambien so that his heart would stop. When she was sure that he was dead, she put him in a box and took his body to a dump. She never told him when this happened. Garrett asked Candy why she killed AJ, and she told him that AJ demanded that she do it. He wanted to die. Garrett said, quote, "You're a fucking liar. You wanted his house and you knew you would get it when he died." End quote. He then asked if Aaron helped her dispose of AJ's body. Candy said no. She did everything by herself. Garrett also recalled a time when Candy told him that she needed to go to Fort Sumner to dump some trash. She FaceTimed him from Fort Sumner and told him that she was hauling a single-axle flatbed trailer from the lake house to the dump site. She had a flat along the way, but she didn't want to stop to change it, so she drove it on the rim for about a mile to the dump site and then dropped the trailer and left it there after dumping the trash. When police reviewed photos of the crime scene at the pit, they saw the flatbed trailer with a flat tire and a wrecked rim. Robin Abeta and Brenda Moyer also gave police copies of a text exchange between them that dated back to August 21st. The text referred to Candy coming by to dump some trash and then leaving the trailer with the flat tire there. Garrett's interview continued when he told police that he left the motel after gathering his belongings and went home. Candy called him later that day to tell him that he left his Rolex behind. He went back to the motel and got it from her, and that was the last time he saw her. A few days later, Candy called him again, and she apologized for getting him, quote, wrapped up in this mess. Police asked him if he thought she was still in town. He said he didn't know, but he didn't think so. They asked if she had ever taken money from AJ's account, and he told them yes. She would write checks on AJ's account quite often. At that point, Garrett said he was done with Candy Joe. He allowed police to take a DNA sample, and he handed his phone over so they could retrieve the data that had been deleted between April and October from it. On the 28th, an arrest warrant was filed for Candy Jo Webb. The warrant cited first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Candy had left New Mexico several days before the warrant for her arrest was issued. A friend of hers from McAllen, Texas, contacted Sean on the 19th to see if he knew where she was. The friend said that Candy had been staying at her place, but she hadn't seen her since October 24th, and she was worried that something had happened to her. Sean told her that Candy was wanted for AJ's murder, and she needed to contact New Mexico State Police. He contacted the police himself and shared the text between his friend and himself. When the friend contacted police, she told them that Garrett was still in contact with Candy Jo. Garrett admitted that Candy was still in contact with him. They again seized his phone to retrieve the data. The walls were slowly closing in on Candy Jo, and she knew it. She pawned a baseball bat with a certificate of authenticity and a gold necklace in Brownsville, Texas. She told the pawnbroker that she had inherited these items when her grandparents passed away. She pawned her phone and went from the pawn shop to the Walmart in Brownsville and got a new phone. She was identified in store video surveillance from the pawn shop as well as Walmart video surveillance. There was an unidentified man with her at the time. Police speculated the man was Garrett Bean, but his records put him in New Mexico the entire time that Candy was on the run. Candy Jo was tracked down to Jacksonville, Florida by U.S. Marshals on November 3rd. They found out that she was pawning cell phones and putting the money into a NetSpend debit account. Candy was arrested in Jacksonville, Florida on November 5th, 2021. Her NetSpend account was seized and video from an ATM at Citizens Bank of Clovis in Fort Sumner was released. The video showed Candy Jo driving by the bank in a white pickup with a flatbed trailer. On the trailer was a toolbox that should have been mounted to the truck. She contacted Sean after her arrest to tell him that she had been arrested for AJ's murder. She told him that AJ hadn't suffered when he died. She also said that she couldn't take it anymore. She just lost it. She told Sean that she had written him a letter and it would be arriving in the mail soon. The letter did arrive a few days later, and he immediately turned it over to police. Here's what it said.
Sean, I needed to write this just to better explain. I'm a psychopath, and I was born that way. I've never felt empathy for other people, not even my family. I know you're confused, angry, and hurt, but don't blame yourself. That's part of being a psychopath. I was able to trick you and seem normal. Charlie Jo, though, is a different story. I truly do love her, but she's always been better off without me, and we both know that. I can honestly say I wasn't on drugs at all, and I know for a lot of people, it's easier to believe that because nobody, even myself, sometimes wants to think I was capable of something like that. But I was, and I'm sorry. I know that you'll raise Charlie right, and I pray more than anything that she's not like me mentally. And if she is, I know that you will again raise her right. Please don't let her think I was all bad. Please tell her, yes, I had issues, and I'm a fucked up person, but that I love her more than anything. By the time you get this letter, I will no longer be on this earth, which may be selfish, but the world is a better place without me in it. Take care of our little girl and protect her from people like me. Candy Jo.
Garrett Bean had received a package from Candy Joe postmarked from Jacksonville, Florida on the 12th of November. The box contained clothes and some toiletries. Some of the clothes items belonged to Garrett and others were Candy's. There were also 3 letters in the box. The letters to Bean expressed her thoughts about herself. She said that there had always been a darkness inside of her and it kept her from being a good person. She said that she lied from the time she could talk. Her mom would always ask her why she lied and she didn't really know. She said that lying had been ingrained in her since she was born. She said that Garrett was helping her become more honest, but it just didn't click with her.
That's why I'm letting you go, so that you can find that woman that brings out the good side in you. You deserve a woman that fits in with your family, a woman that can give you a family, and also give you the most important thing that I no longer can, a future. I'll love you until my last breath, forever and always, my baby. Love, your twin flame.
Another of the letters read,
Garrett Bean, a name I love so much, but how can I say I love you when I'm a psychopath, with no empathy for others? I'm so good at covering the fact that I have 0 feelings and that honestly, the most I've been scared of is getting caught because I'm selfish. So I guess the best way to be selfish is just to end my life and just leave all this shit behind. Now I was absolutely obsessed with you more than you'll ever know. And I think a little part of me does have true love for you and what could have been. I wasn't lying when I said that I've killed 2 people. That will always be the truth, and I'll write a letter confessing everything and setting all the rumors in my small town straight. The only thing that I regret is not meeting you sooner, and then maybe that dark side could have been subdued. Everything happens for a reason. I said in the other letter, I've been like this since I can remember, but I feel like the downfall started when my mom passed. Before that, I never really dealt with death and those feelings that it brought. As the years went on, the idea of death, or everything like the ideology behind it, started phasing me less and less until one day I fully snapped. I was reading, and everyone I've known is shocked by this and saying that I must have been on drugs. And fuck, I wish that was true sometimes, instead of the truth that I'm a soulless psychopath with no empathy or real love for anyone else, even myself. I can't begin to tell you how many times, even from a very young age, crying out and asking God, why wasn't I normal? Why didn't I think like other people or act like them? Why was I born into the family I was? I've always asked why with no fucking answer. So that dark passenger took over, and I couldn't and didn't want to stop it. You, beyond a reason of a doubt, were the epic, great love of my life, and I'm so grateful I got to be with you the time that I did. Garrett, I saw my warrant and the news story and all the shit everyone is saying, so I'm going to be selfish one more time and say bye to this lifetime, and maybe next time I'll get it right. I believe we will be together once again. I will love you forever and always. Love, your baby girl, Candy Joe.
The last letter said this.
Garrett, my love, my everything, my twin flame, my baby. Well, I'm here at yet another bus station. I know we talk every day and I tell you everything going on. I need something to help pass the time by. So I think I've decided to tell you that it's time for me to let you go. As much as I don't want that at all because I want to be so selfish with you, but that's not fair to you and your future. I was thinking, okay, Candy, you can make it work until Garrett, the love of my life, comes to you. But how does that look? We would constantly be living in fear of being caught, and again, that's not fair. With the choices I've made, I will never be able to give you a family like you deserve. Garrett, I will never be able to give you a normal life, a healthy life that you deserve. I turned out to be that pretty face that was a waste of your time. You deserve someone that will love you with everything that they have, someone who doesn't have a dark, bastard soul like mine. You have always been a bright light to me, and you will forever be my shining light that I will always keep in my heart. Your laugh, your smile, God, that gorgeous smile of yours. The way your arms would always give me that extra squeeze after every hug, or those perfect lips that I couldn't get enough of. The way your strong hands feel running up and down my body, waking up sleepy in the middle of the night, pulling each other closer. I'm sorry that I brought you to this place of uncertainty in your life. It wasn't fair to you at all. And that's why I'm ending this. And you can say all that you want. How could you leave me like this? But you and I both know, for you to have a life with your family and your future, I have to let you go. After you get this letter, I'll call you one last time to hear your voice. That voice that does things to me and makes me so happy. You will be my forever twin flame, my soulmate, my other half. I know beyond a reason of a doubt that I will never meet anyone like you ever in my life, which is why you will forever have my whole heart and soul. I love you forever and always, baby. Love, Candy Joe.
Candy was extradited back to New Mexico and was being held at the Debaca County Detention Center in Fort Sumner. On December 1st, law enforcement interviewed her about AJ's death. She told them it was an accident. She said that she'd given AJ some pills that she had bought on the street because he had slipped discs in his back. She gave them to him to relieve the pain he was having and help him sleep. She wasn't sure how many pills that she had given him, but she didn't think it was that many. She didn't think she had given him enough to kill him, but she also hadn't taken into account that he was taking other medications. She said that she had given him 2 Xanax and a muscle relaxer, but she couldn't remember what the muscle relaxer was. She said that she bought the pills because she had her own problems. She was addicted to Xanax and muscle relaxers. She said that after he had taken the pills, he fell asleep in his chair with the dog and the cat. She let him sleep and left him there for a few days. When she came back, he was still in the chair, but he was dead. She left him for a few days. Days, mind you. She left a man who, according to her, couldn't control his bodily functions and couldn't dress himself for days? She went on to tell police that at that point she freaked out and didn't know what to do, so she put him in the toolbox and dumped him in the trash pit. She said that AJ had been complaining a lot that day. She said that he was losing control of his bowels and he couldn't get his pants off by himself. He didn't want her to bathe him or help him clean himself. She told police that she was getting tired of taking care of him, but he wasn't supposed to die like that. She said that he was tired of being sick all the time and not being able to take care of himself. It was making him cranky. She explained that she felt it was her duty to take care of AJ since everyone else in the family was addicted to drugs or dead. She also told police that she was stressed out because she lost her job during COVID. She said that he died in mid-September. The day after she found him, she took Aaron's toolbox from the shed in the backyard, wrapped AJ in blankets, and put him in the toolbox and took him to the trash pit in Fort Sumner. She put the tape over his mouth because she couldn't stand to look at him, and she taped his wrists so that he would be easier to drag from the house. She made it clear that no one else helped her put him in the toolbox or move him to the pit. She did all of this on her own. She chose the trash pit to dump him because no one ever went out there. She thought he would never be found. She didn't think about the renters at the house going out there. After that, she made up the story about Shady Oaks. She was desperately trying to cover her tracks. People were asking questions and she couldn't tell them the truth or she would lose everything. He had never gone to a retirement home. She was the only one caring for him. She filed the no trespass orders against the family members so they couldn't visit or keep track of him. She was asked about the pickup and she told police that she sold it to a salvage yard in Houston. After that, she decided to head to Florida since bus tickets were cheapest there. She admitted to taking money out of AJ's bank accounts. She would write herself a check for cash, then cash the check at a bank or deposit the money into her account. When police asked her about the story she told Garrett about killing another person, she said she made that up. She never had killed anyone else. She made up the story because she didn't want to tell Garrett what she had done to AJ. She even offered a list of her mother's ex-boyfriends to prove that they were all alive and well. She explained that she felt like a psychopath because she had no empathy for people. When she found AJ dead in his chair, she just made a plan and worked that plan. She didn't cry for him or even become upset. She put the situation in the back of her mind. After the interview, police found that Candy had Googled how to plead insanity. Candy Jo took a plea deal that reduced her charges from first-degree murder to second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison for AJ's death and 3 years of probation for fraud. Tampering with evidence charge was reduced from a first-degree felony to a third-degree felony. At sentencing, her lawyer claimed that the year and 9 months that Candy had served at that time was enough. He said that she was a changed woman. She was seeking help for her addiction problems and her mental health. She was taking parenting classes so she could be a better mom to her daughter. She also helped an inmate who was experiencing breathing problems. He suggested that she be sentenced to probation only. She wrote a letter to the court expressing her remorse for her grandfather's murder and other crimes that she had committed. The judge sentenced her to 18 years in prison, taking into account the year and 9 months that she served since being arrested. The maximum sentence for second-degree murder in New Mexico is 21 years. After announcing her sentence, the judge gave his reasons for the sentencing that he handed down. First, he considered retribution and punishment. He reviewed the existing legislation and thought about the treatment of AJ's body. Second, he thought about deterrence. He wanted to send a message to the community that justice was served and that crimes of this type would be punished severely. Lastly, he considered rehabilitation. He didn't think Candy was beyond hope. He addressed her directly. You have been working hard to become a better person. I think you are remorseful. I think you have shown you can be rehabilitated. I will close this story by reading again AJ's obituary to you. AJ was born in Fort Sumner on April 2nd, 1938. He worked in the logging industry in Alaska and Oregon as a young man and joined the U.S. Navy. He married his wife Virginia in 1962 in Weddingville, California, and traveled the country as a truck driver before settling down in Fort Sumner and setting up a hamburger stand. AJ and his wife, Virginia Roberts, traveled together while AJ was working as a truck driver. They made their home in Wellington, Texas and Dixon, Missouri before returning to Fort Sumner. AJ drove a truck for Furs Trucking for many years while living in Fort Sumner. He also owned and operated his own truck. AJ never retired. He and Virginia built a hamburger stand and set it up in Fort Sumner. They continued to run it for years. He was a member of the Church on the Hill in Fort Sumner, New Mexico. It's important that we remember AJ. And despite everything that Candy Jo did, and despite the fact that she has been largely the focus of this episode, it's my hope that AJ will not be forgotten. Thanks for listening, and stay safe, New Mexico.